everyone. Design isn't just about how a space looks. It's about how it makes us feel, think, and function. Every environment we step into shapes our emotion, focus, and even memory. In this Mindscapes series, we explore how design goes beyond decoration to improve our lives. I'm Professor Nadim Adi from Interior Design at Texas State University, and throughout this series, we'll speak with designers, artists, psychologists, and researchers to better understand how the spaces around us shape our mental well-being. Productivity isn't just about hard work, it's about setting yourself up for success. The way our environments are designed can help us find focus, enter the famed state of flow, and avoid burnout. Good design balances efficiency with well-being. In this episode, we're exploring how our surroundings impact our ability to focus and be productive. Our first guest is Dr. Mais Al-Junaidi, Assistant Professor of Instruction in the Department of Psychology at Texas State University, who will share with us her expertise in the human state. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you.
So we always hear the state of flow or the famed state of focus in athletes when they tell us after the match, well, I was in the zone, it was just me and the goal, or me and the touchdown zone. How do we, from a jealous point of view, how do we get to that state?
To make the physical environment supportive, it must be user-centered. Mm-hmm. It must promote comfort, excitement, the person feels they are welcomed in it. Okay. So when it is user-centered, it becomes ideal for the person.
So if you're happy with the environment you're in, you're more likely to become hyper-focused.
Yes, more productive and happier as well.
Oh, okay. And what would be some of the barriers that that might have a negative impact on productivity, I suppose?
It can be any element in the interior design. Let us say noises. Imagine you're sitting in an office with a lot of noises around you, just beside the street. It can be the room temperature. Imagine being in a very hot or very cold room temperature. This will affect your mood, this will affect your productivity as well. Privacy, it's another element. Imagine your office is in the corridor and everyone just passing nearby. So privacy is another important element as well.
Well, one of the things we used to buy newspapers and such, still to this day, if you're reading your newspaper and somebody is kind of staring into it, that kind of distracts you from reading.
Yes, so it's almost every element in your environment. If the area is not organized, it's like it's cluttered a lot, all of these are going to affect the mood of the person and the performance of the person. Even light, if you look at the light, this is an important element. If the light is dim or it's very strong, all of these will affect the performance and how you are behaving in your surrounding environment.
So you bring in a good point. Sometimes in some movies, like I'm trying to remember, some of the scenes in Indiana Jones, for instance, they show him in a library and it's very dim, and you wonder, is it enough for a person to kind of realistically sit down there and be able to focus on reading a book or doing a task?
So there are different levels of light, and there is a study about this aspect. There are actually many studies about this aspect. Some lights, if they are extremely dim or low, it will make the person feel sleepy and fall asleep shortly after that. But a higher level of light can be or encourage socializing. It can make the environment feel calm. Encourages them, if like they are sitting with someone, talk more. They use it in restaurants, this certain level of light in fancy restaurants to promote a sense of calmness in the environment and encourage people who are sitting on the same table to talk more. If the light is stronger, like the ones we use in the office, it's meant to the environment, to make the environment encouraging to work. Now there is a very strong light, like this, the one we have in the studio now, and the ones that they use in the hospital as well. It's in the hospitals, we want to see the skin clearly of the patient, for example, because this can help us as physicians establish if there is any health issue, physical health issue. So these lights help us figure things. So every tone of or like strength of light has its benefits.
So probably don't put a green light bulb in a doctor's office.
No, you need the white one. The white one is the correct one.
And you mentioned like the different colors of light. When it comes to focus, for instance, would we kind of favor yellow light, do you think, or bright white lights like here, or what's the usual thing, or what would say the literature kind of point us to?
So I've give examples out of examples about the strengths of the light itself.
Yeah.
The color of the light, its effect is similar to the color of the walls and the furniture. When we talk about colors, it doesn't matter now if this color is coming from the light or it's coming from the walls or coming from the furniture. Green, for example, can be cheerful. Orange can be exciting. Purple can be like to promote calmness. So it doesn't matter in this case if the light is if the color is coming from the light or from any other design element.
Okay. So kind of, I might be going out on a limb here, but getting one of those light bulbs that could change the light, that might be a very cheap way of kind of...
Instead of painting your walls, yes, it can make, but it can make the whole, unless you are, the whole area maybe green, unless you are directing the lights and using special like shades for it towards a certain angle.
So more spotlight, less kind of light bulb in the middle of the room.
Yes, otherwise like you will have the green everywhere around you.
Okay, so we're mentioning using light bulbs and such, but what would be some also kind of some simple approaches to kind of boost productivity for a person?
Let us say the person is in a workplace. You can start by organizing the space, use drawers, use boxes, label things. It will make the person feels better. If there is, it's better actually to have, not if there is, it's better to have a break room that's far away from the office. Not really far, but the person needs to walk, leave the office and go outside to the break room.
All right.
Leaving the space of work will make them feel they actually having a break. And in the break room, if you have tables, chairs, this means you are encouraging socialization. People will come and sit maybe together, have lunch together. Try to, if you are the interior designer, to provide a natural light in the office space, like big windows, for example. Of course, you need to provide curtains so the person can control it as well, feel like they have the ability to control the amount of light they have inside.
You bring in a good point. The impression of control, or our sense of self-control on a space, with that probably that would affect how we feel about a space.
Absolutely,
right?
you feel it also in the room temperature. Some places, some companies, some offices, you can't modify the temperature of your room. It's centralized, and it might be very cold outside, and they still have maybe the air conditioner working. It can be like, so sometimes you can't control the space, and this of course won't feel like pleasant for the person. Now, apart from these factors as well, studies show that green spaces can improve the mood of the person. So if you have natural elements, like try, for example, to have plants in the space, if there are views to gardens, if you can't have any of those, even artwork, if it is, studies showed if the artwork is about nature, it can improve the space, the mood in the space. Other types of artwork, like abstract art, doesn't have good or doesn't have an impact on the mood in general compared to art about nature.
My mind is immediately transported to a series where they put a person in a space with a lot of clown drawings and photographs, and that would be a very well, personally for me, that would be a very uneasy space to stay in. So, but I suppose it differs from person to person.
It differs,
as well.
Yes.
So in the same way, you kind of need to know well, if the person is really into abstract art, maybe that would improve their...
Yes, there is no study to prove that abstract art can actually improve the mood. The art that did improve the mood was art about nature.
All right.
When they did the study on abstract art, it didn't have any impact on the mood. But we always need to consider, yes, the individual factors. Some people, they might like this the most. This is where communication comes in hand. But if you are in a public area, in a big organization, big offices, then arts about nature generally improve the mood of people.
Okay. And I guess we went on this tangent, but say we've got a blank wall versus a wall with some art on it. Usually the one with art on it is slightly better.
Art about nature.
Okay, gotcha.
Otherwise, there is no study to prove that other types of art can actually have an impact on the mood.
So that's potentially a study.
It's a study.
We can expect we might
Project,
end up doing,
yes.
right? So fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Mace, for these fascinating insights. In our next segment, we'll be joined by Caroline Hill, Associate Professor in the Department of Interior Design at Texas State University. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Welcome back. Our second guest is Caroline Hill, Associate Professor in the Department of Interior Design at Texas State University, who brings her expertise to this discussion. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So when we talk about productivity in design, of course, everyone wants to be productive. Every business owner wants to kind of get, all of the productivity they
Absolutely.
can per second, I suppose.
Right.
But how can we get, we always hear about this mythical flow state when we talk to athletes and interviews and such, like, it was me, it was the goalpost, nothing else. How can we kind of help people in their workspaces get to that?
Time is money, so employees want to, or employers want the most out of their employees as possible. So I think a few things to consider are, the main thing to consider is distractions, right?
Yeah.
So how do we manage the distractions that can be present in the interior environment? And there can be a lot, right? In the workplace specifically, the trend has been open office, right? Everybody's in a workstation, very low panels, so you're hearing lots of conversations around your, colleagues. Sometimes those are helpful conversations and you're learning informally, but sometimes they're distracting. So being able to manage acoustics is a really important part of getting into that flow, and then empowering people to shape that immediate environment in a way that supports the way they learn or study or work is really the main thing we need to do. So that means providing a wide variety of workspace types, a wide variety of tools that can be customized for everything from lighting that can be brighter or more dimmable.
Okay. So giving them a sense of control over their environment.
Absolutely.
And I love the idea when you mentioned acoustics in an open office, because we tend to informally see people dealing with it by having their headphones on.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I suppose it's a delicate balance between wanting them to be comfortable and wanting them to be able to focus. And how do you kind of thread that needle?
That's a great question. I think that in my experience, the only way to thread that needle successfully is to acknowledge that what works for one person isn't going to work for everyone else. And all of that has to be balanced with, of course, annoying things like budget. What can you afford to put into a space, right?
That's true, yeah.
Because we can't necessarily afford to create every variety of option out there. So
That's true,
how can we create the most options possible so that people can heads down focus, whether that's headphones or white noise that we might insert, or adjustable panels in a workstation or screens or things like that. Also providing places for people to change their setting, their work setting throughout the day is really important.
I think one of the things we see sometimes in offices is hot desks or hot desking. What's your impression on that?
You know, I think people either love it or hate it. Some people really want to define their personal space and they don't want anybody to touch it. They want to set it up the way they want it. They want to know what to expect when they walk into the office the next day. Other people are like, I don't care. Today I want to sit here. Tomorrow I want to sit there. So I think from, you know, and this comes more from a management perspective probably, but I think acknowledging both of those important tendencies and providing holding space for both of those is probably the right answer. I think it's also important for us not to assume that to get into the flow state, you have to have this entirely distraction-free environment. Because I think some people, I'm an extrovert, so I personally actually like to go sit at a Starbucks or actually sit at a bar in the afternoon before it's too busy. I actually get more work done in an environment like that than I do home alone. If it's too quiet for me, I get distracted.
Fair enough.
I need just a gentle hum of noise around me to get things done. And I think as an interior designer, we want to acknowledge both of those.
That's true. That's true. Would there be things that you think, okay, these are some of the things that you know, everyone would agree that, okay, these are a definite distraction when it comes to productivity and all of that. So definitely, you know, avoid these things.
I think glare, you know, light that's too bright and often light that's too cold or cool that would be a general no-no in my opinion. And then acoustics, unwanted noise, right? So the hum of a fluorescent light, electrical or HVAC system noise.
I'm guessing a mechanical keyboard.
Those kind of things. The more we can, I think generally those are, let's avoid those things for sure.
Fair enough. I'm guessing for our older audience, a typewriter maybe.
Click, 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 click.
Exactly. And when we're looking at one of the things that we tend to see happen a lot is burnout at work. So what is it, and how can we kind of avoid that?
So burnout is actually a topic I've done a lot of research on, and I have a lot of opinions on burnout. There are a lot of things related to burnout that happen outside of interior design, obviously, right? A lot of management and personnel kinds of things. But in terms of the interior environment, again, I think it all goes back to that. Do you feel respected as an employee or an occupant of this space? Do you feel like the way you need to work is being honored, or the way you need to heal in a hospital, is that being honored? If you request changes to that environment, are they able to be made, right? How much can you how much can you personalize and control that environment? To me, the more we feel respected and heard as human beings, the more we're going to mitigate that burnout. And
so in a way, it's kind of like having your own territory of sorts, right?
That's respected by your peers and your supervisors. And that idea of autonomy, I think is important to human beings.
Oh, that's cool. I'm guessing many of us, myself included, used to think, well, if I want to have a good working area or something, I have to, you know, redecorate, get furniture, all of that. But what would be some simple things people could make in their day-to-day lives?
To mitigate burnout?
Or to feel more productive in a way.
Well, I think, you know, at the end of the day, we desire joy. Right?
That's true.
Play is a really important of life. It's fundamental to the way children are raised. I do think that we can take ourselves a little too seriously sometimes. I think we should insert a little bit of fun into our workspaces, whether that's just a tiny bit of color, or, you know, a quirky little flower arrangement or something fun. I think we should personalize it so that we can be reminded of the things that we're working for, or whatever the space type may be, right? What are the things that are important to us fundamentally as human beings?
Yeah.
And how can we infuse our spaces with those things as gentle reminders that we're bigger than that job?
Fair enough. Yeah, yeah. It's an often kind of common thing that people fall into, is that their job defines their whole world.
Right.
Yeah.
But it doesn't.
That's true.
Or maybe we should say it shouldn't. Yeah.
That's true. So keeping with the theme of joy, how do we quantify that?
Ooh,
Like that's the scientific side of me.
Right. Yeah. Right. Is there a joy meter out there?
that would
Maybe
be,
we need to develop a joy meter.
that would be fun to see. I keep going to an animated series where they're extracting laughter or something.
I just think we need to remember that life is hard.
Yeah.
And we
yeah.
can take ourselves real seriously. And part of interior design should be beauty. I
Yeah.
mean, yes, we need to be productive. Yes, we need to honor neurodivergency and lots of different functional needs, mental, physical, all of those.
Yeah.
But we also need to allow room for joy.
So the idea of the usual reasoning when we get from our students in design, well, why did you do it this way? Because it looked cool, is still one of our main directives.
Well,
in a way.
I think we can say because it's beautiful, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because people visually enjoy it. It provides a moment of respite from
Yeah.
the monotony of a day.
Got
right?
it. And I'm guessing the more you can tie that to your own personal story, the better it
Absolutely.
becomes.
Right.
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 Yeah. Yeah. Just keeping up with that. Would you say that there's, for instance, that certain types of jobs are more difficult to design for than others?
Yes. I think, so again, my area of expertise tends to be corporate workplace.
Yeah.
But I would say generally, tech firms are a lot of fun. They're willing
Yeah.
to let you do just about anything.
Oh, right. Yeah.
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 And they are big into, you know, let's fail harder, let's have some fun, let's innovate, let's
Oh, wow.
create. Nothing against the lawyers, but lawyers and bankers tend to be a little more tightly laced, a little more interested in hierarchy and status,
I
and
guess.
I want this thing because I'm this level,
Yeah.
right?
I thought that the medical side would be the ones who are more high.
Oh, that could be too. Yeah, I haven't done a lot of medical facilities, but
Yeah.
I would expect that is a fair assumption.
Okay. Well, and I think it's a good thing. You don't want your doctor to be like, "Oops, I forgot this."
Right,
You
right,
know?
right. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's fantastic. I think a lot of food for thought here. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
So in our next segment, we'll be joined by Crystal Marine, interior design student at Texas State University. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Our guest is Crystal Marine, an interior design student at Texas State University who brings her expertise to this discussion. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So we often hear people in the field of sports, whether it's football, basketball, even golf, saying that, okay, I was hyper-focused and I was in the zone, and we tend to categorize that as a flow state. How do you think we can get there as a non-athlete, you know, or as a designer? How can we kind of promote that state in a person?
I mean, kind of going back what we were talking about, I think just functionality and adaptability in a space is very important. And sometimes people don't want to use a space the same way they did before. So maybe modular furniture, different, you know, different ways you can move things in a room, or different workspaces. I think that's really important for that user's need in that moment because
Yeah, I think you bring up a very valid point where we do have different needs in the workplace depending on what time of day we're at,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So definitely my 8 a.m. self is very different from my 3 p.m. self, right? Yeah, okay. I think the other thing you bring across is also, which is very fun, is the ability to kind of customize that space a little bit here and there.
Yeah.
So would you say if we're trying to be productive, what would be some barriers to productivity in terms of the designed environment?
Let's see. Like barriers, like stunting. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly. Like the thing, say I get into an I go to work in a company, and I go to that office, and you feel that the office is actively fighting you. To kind of like, it's either too distracting or something's up with that.
I mean, well, barriers like obvious it could be lighting, it could be noise control. Maybe they have cubicles instead of actual like partitions to close off a room, and you're constantly hearing that, that auditory stimulation from somewhere else, and you can't really work. I think productivity is subjective, so you should have many options for everyone.
Gotcha. And I think you mention things like cubicles rather than partitions. So to the people who are listening who kind of think, well, aren't they the same thing? Could you tell them a bit what the difference might be?
Well, for cubicles, I was meaning like just maybe it goes up 5 feet and that's stops. So and then it's open.
Yeah.
Where partitions, say, especially commercial partitions, you could easily just put them on tracks and they go.
All right.
They can retract and go, or they can be fixed. But I think non-fixed partitions are not only are they useful, they're really fun.
All right, yeah.
Well,
definitely kind of playing with the layout here and there.
Yeah.
So, all right. One of the things that we hear a lot about is in terms of lighting, we hear, it's too bright or too dim, but what about the temperature of the light, do you think? Like, how would that play a role?
The temperature in the building, or the light?
I guess let's touch on the do you think say a yellowish light works better for an office versus the lighting we've got here, which is really if we look upwards it's blinding, but
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think ambient light is a lot more useful, but again, it could be for some people that could maybe tire them out. Make them a little too calm in a workspace.
Fair enough.
Maybe someone does need a fluorescent light.
Yeah. Okay. And when it comes to the temperature of a space, so I guess the AC or the heating, how do you think that affects our productivity?
Oh, 100%, big time. Again, it just goes back to being comfortable or not. And I mean, for someone like me, I really don't like to be cold.
Gotcha.
I don't really like to be hot. So I think an in-between is really important for workflow.
Okay. And one of the things that we often hear about in the workplace is people experiencing burnout or I guess being too stressed, and I guess, as we grow older, I suppose we have so many other things to worry about that stress kind of comes with it. But how do you think we can, as designers, try to reduce burnout in a workplace?
That's difficult because design is just so go. Let's see. I mean, I really think it comes down to your space, and not even that. It's just really sticking to a timeline and giving yourself a day to not do that, you know,
Oh,
or
okay.
not. Yeah, but I understand as a designer, like I feel like you're always on the clock. It's
Fair
like
enough.
never ending.
Yeah, yeah. And I think in terms of being equipped to talk about stress, I think our profession is one of the. It's right up there with.
Yeah.
In terms of stress and all, I think from a student perspective as well, I guess you have to deal with a lot of stress as well.
Oh yeah, it's just
Yeah.
a lot of deadlines
Fair enough.
that come up very quickly.
Fair enough. So as you mentioned, things like effective timekeeping and
Yes.
having that designated time to unplug and not think about all of these things. These could be really important things to think about, to keep in mind.
Absolutely.
And if someone is, say, wants to make a few changes, think of they're going down to the supermarket and they've got, a very modest budget to improve their space, to be able to have a nicer quality of space. What would you tell them to do? Like what would you end up doing, for instance?
With like limited money and
Yeah.
I'm also a sustainability studies minor, so I'm very huge proponent of secondhand and stuff like that. I would start there because there are many things out there and better quality. You want to have, it's quality over quantity in my opinion. And although something might be cheap, doesn't make it better, and you might be throwing it in the landfill in a year from now. So
fair enough. Oh, okay. And I suppose as designers, we end up interacting with a lot of different clients, like all from the very kind of avant-garde designers who want the latest and greatest to the very classical oriented. How do we navigate that when we're designing a workplace? That's
hard. Again, I think it just comes down to that's a hard one for me because personally I just feel like most designers kind of like find their thing and then design that way.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know, that's a good question.
No, it's one of those things that you think about. Well, I guess the more you become specialized, the more you attract a certain type of client, right? But I suppose it's really important to have a style, like a design style, all your own, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I like touching on the sustainability aspect when it comes to design, and how do you think that improves the mental health of a person?
I feel like it is sustainable design is rooted in nature, and so where I come with that, or how I see it, as if we're using sustainable materials, in a sense you're a part of that nature, and that's calming, and I think it's natural for humans to be connected to nature like that.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really cool point that deep down we're still our very primal selves in a way, still connected to nature. So we, us craving to have plants or green elements in a home, or craving, say, having wood furniture is kind of a subliminal way of us kind of like, oh, I need to go to a park.
Right. You're touching grass in a sense.
Exactly. Okay, and I think there's value to it, because whenever someone is too stressed, you tell them, oh, go out for a walk or go to a park or something, correct?
Right, yeah. Yep.
Oh, fantastic. I think that's very kind of useful to think whenever we talk about design.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. So in our next segment, we'll be joined by Dr. Naomi Coleman Medina, Assistant Professor of Instruction in the Department of Psychology at Texas State University. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Our next guest is Dr. Naomi Coleman Medina, an assistant professor in the Department of Instruction, the Department of Psychology at Texas State University, who brings her expertise to this discussion. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So we often hear athletes say they were in the zone when they're playing sports, and they're hyper-focused, and I guess I'm kind of envious of that state. Like, how do you think we can get people to get there or to be that hyper-focused whenever they're doing something?
Yes. So I guess, well, since I'm not a sports psychologist, so I can't really speak to that, area.
Yeah.
But when we think of productivity, which I think this is where we're going, right? Like to be able to focus.
Yeah.
And have a specific purpose and stick with a mission in terms of what we're doing, what we're analyzing or what we're trying to figure out. Like, of course, I live in academia, so I'm thinking, studying or reading, preparing. I'm going to go back to the theory of attention restoration theory, which argued that we really need breaks.
Gotcha. Okay.
And in fact, another part of that study had to do with productivity. It wasn't just about being able to find our concentration again. It was that if we can concentrate, we're probably going to be more productive. So when we say productive, I'm going to go a little bit lower at another layer and think of how able are we to really focus and concentrate on something in order to be productive.
Yeah.
So, the studying or looking, reading, minute after minute, hour after hour, can bring such fatigue that we shut down, and we may not even know that we have.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Because we have this drive to keep going.
It's when I was a student, I could tell that I've been reading the same page again and again,
and still getting nothing out of it.
Yeah.
And so what I recommend is a brief break. I'm not saying go for an hour and a half workout at the gym, although if that worked, that's fine.
Gotcha.
I'm saying go out and sit out for 10 minutes. If you don't have an outside, leave your studies and go focus. And I don't want to use the word focus because that seems pressure. Gaze at something that is natural. If it's a window, if it's taking a break from that and focusing, changing one's focus into and attending to something else that has to do more with nature is going to help us literally be more productive.
Got it. Well, so that's fascinating in a way, and I would say, would there be things to try and avoid if we're trying to get more focused? I mean, I know myself. I'll sometimes put my phone to the side because whenever that thing rings or beeps, it's always whatever I'm doing. Like, and I've lost that chain of thought or something. So.
And it's interesting you say that because sometimes we feel like we're going to take a break, so we go check our phone. We'll check our text messages, but that's not a break.
Okay.
I think that we don't really understand sometimes what is a break and what is not.
Yeah.
Leaving one's studies to go out in the hallway and check one's phone is not a break.
All right. Okay. Yeah.
It's leaving one's studies, leaving screen time for about 5-10 minutes.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And allowing oneself to absorb something new, something different.
Got it.
That isn't part of those.
Yeah, because I think more and more we're really hooked up to screens and notifications and everything. So So I think that's a really interesting way to.
And
kind of
now
go
I will
about it.
say, you know, giving technology some credit, you know, there's all of these apps now that, you know, have nature sounds, and I mean, there's so many apps out there. I'm still kind of like, I guess that's better than no nature, but
Yeah.
that's still a form of directed attention. To me,
Yeah.
if we're focusing on pulling up the app, focusing on, you know, if we could, and that might just be not logical for some people. I understand that.
Got it. Yeah.
But to
yeah.
be aware of really trying to work at focusing, taking our focus away from what we've been laboring over,
Yeah.
and directing our attention to something that can lower our fatigue
Okay.
intellectually,
Oh,
cognitively.
Yeah. Well, I think fatigue is one of those things we're dealing with cognitively, and I think if we get fatigued enough, that leads to burnout, right? So, how is the same approach valid for burnout, or do we need something stronger? I guess.
I don't love burnout, but I love talking about burnout.
Yeah.
I worked, as an experience, I worked in an office over a period of quite a while, and I had no windows, and I had, you can have some plants, like some succulents can grow in, you know, artificial lighting. A pothos can grow, but it really, I had no sense of what was going on outside. I had no sense of it.
Yeah.
And I would leave, I'd work from about 9 to 4 or 5, straight through.
Oh wow.
And when I'd come out, I feel like, oh my goodness, what's the sky looking like? What is that?
Yeah.
And I was so fatigued.
Yeah.
And I was so exhausted at the end of that day.
Yeah.
And that's really what really contributed and inspired me to study, you know, on the natural world and our environment.
All right.
And so lowering, becoming more calm. And I'm sorry, Nadine, your question had to do with.
Oh no, that's fine. I think.
But coming out of that type of an environment and into something that felt more natural really helped.
I'm getting flashbacks from my own postdoc.
Oh, you are?
So I had the same type of office. There could be anything happening on the outside, and you would never know. We'd never know. It even got worse if you had headphones on. You wouldn't. People wouldn't even hear the fire alarm if it.
Oh, that's right too.
So because we had to kind of go and tap people on the shoulder. There's a fire. You need to leave.
Right.
So I'm So I guess to the average person kind of listening to this and thinking, well, okay, I want to do some things that will make my workspace better and help me focus more and avoid burnout. What kind of tips would you give them?
I would say that, again, and I understand how impossible it seems to take a break when we're involved in something.
Oh yeah.
Or the clock is ticking.
Yeah.
I identify with that, and I get that. And there's sometimes, let's just say, it's not possible. I get
Fair
that.
enough. Yeah.
If it is, we really ultimately become more productive when we leave that environment.
All right. Yeah.
And let's say we can't. Let's say that's impossible. Again, with something as minimal as visual images on the wall that have a nature scene. And I'm going to also bring up, you know, some of these companies have become masterminds at producing artificial plants that look real.
All right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah, that's true.
And so, you know, even if that's the necessity, it's not impossible to pull that off.
Yeah. Because we find ourselves, I won't name names, but whenever we go to certain furniture shops, they have these artificial plants, and sometimes you have to do a double take.
Yeah, right, exactly. And I used to have this this disdain for artificial plants, and now I don't any longer. Because I see their value.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Because they really are more. You know, humans I think and when it comes to, and I can't speak to design, that's your
No,
gig.
fair enough. Yeah,
But you know, we've always kind of thought of plants as just bringing them in because they'll make the room look prettier.
Yeah.
We don't even think about what it's going to do for our psychological well-being.
Exactly. Yeah.
So having that with that purpose in mind, bringing something in that can function, live in that environment.
Yeah.
And if there isn't anything that can live, or let's say there's policies. And some office buildings may say no live plants allowed.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah.
What about pictures? What about images? What about
Yeah.
artificial plants? What about anything that can bring us back to what we are really innately bonded to, and that is nature?
I guess even a print on someone's clothing might
Yeah.
do well.
Wear your favorite garden T-shirt.
There you go. Well, I think that's really fascinating, and I really like lots of things for me to think about and to carry on to design practice. So I thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Awesome. So in our next segment, we'll be joined by Denise McAllister, Assistant Professor in the Department of Interior Design at Texas State University. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Our next guest is Denise McAllister, Assistant Professor in the Department of Interior Design at Texas State University, who brings her expertise to this discussion. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So whenever we hear athletes talk post-game or something, they always say, I was in the zone. Like it was me, it was the goalpost or the hoop or whichever sport it is, and nothing else. And I'm always kind of envious of that state where you're kind of like hyper-focused on the task at hand. And I guess, how do we kind of, how are we able to kind of get to that flow state or that zone, so to speak?
Do you find yourself entering that state when you're writing or when you're creating?
Sometimes. Well, I like to kind of know a bit more of like, oh, maybe if I do this or do that, that'll make it easier for me to get there.
Right. Wouldn't it be nice if you could
Oh
just
yes, I love
turn it on like a switch?
Oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Right.
I think avoiding distracting situations.
All right.
And some people are more easily distracted than others.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And dependent, once you get into the flow state, then you don't really care if you hear the trash truck going by or
Yeah.
but when you're not in the flow state. So how would we get supportive environment, like a chair that doesn't irritate you.
Oh, that's
a
true.
chair, and
yeah.
again, it comes back to what you can control as a user of the space. Some people like to kick way back in a reclining type position, and other
Oh,
people
yeah.
need to be up.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we used to do this at school all the time. We'd kick back, like we'd lean back in our chairs, and every now and then you'd hear the one of the students
fall all the way back,
fall
yeah.
back, and everyone wakes up, I guess.
Yeah, it wakes everybody up. I remember when CAD environments. I did a project for a CAD company that not architectural CAD, but
Yeah.
mechanical drafting kind of CAD.
Oh, okay.
And I went in, and they were all laying back in recliner chairs with keyboards on their laps.
Oh,
And it was
wow.
dark. It was dark in there, and that was.
Oh wow.
It was like, what are they doing, and why are they laying down? They're almost laying down, but they were men, and they were youngish technical people.
Yeah.
And our environments have shifted a lot since then. And
Yeah.
even in the classroom, we're working on computers now.
That's
I mean,
true.
we
Yeah.
also do hand drafting. When
Yeah.
you're in a hand drafting lab, you have to have bright lights.
That is
But when
true.
you're on a computer, you need to have dimmer lights.
That's
so
true,
again, our spaces have to support the various needs
And I think it
and preferences of the
Yeah.
users.
Yeah, and I think you bring in a good point of we tend to think sometimes that productivity is a general thing that we could kind of approach with general interventions, I suppose, but it really depends on what are you doing. So
Right.
when you
right.
mentioned drafting, I'm like, oh yeah, because you're kind of doing this, right?
Right.
And if you're on a computer, you can, as you can kind of lean back and,
Yeah.
and type away, I guess.
Yeah, and
so.
even their concentrated focus. I feel like I say flexibility all the time, but all of our users are so different.
That is
And
true. Yeah.
our focus today is on neurodivergent, populations, but everybody's got a tend of that. And every client that I've worked for in a residential environment, the children have a different need than the husband and the mother, you know.
That is so true.
And you know what, like do you remember, have you heard about man cave? A man cave?
Oh yeah.
You know, what is it that makes men prefer this cave-like environment?
That is true. Yeah,
And we just have to create the space that
it's always interesting in a way because I think as much as we kind of try to go past the idea that we've come a long way since our the ancient times, I guess, or something. But
since we were in college.
yeah, I think there's something like kind of coded within us that prefers the prefers open space, prefers green space. If we're gonna sleep, there's a very deep level of coding that says, if you're gonna sleep, you need to kind of be in a safe environment. So
absolutely,
whatever that kind of, even though that you're in a home, the doors are locked and you're practically in a very safe space, you still see people when they want to sit down, kind of choose, I'm going to take the seat with my back to the wall because then I'm confident no one's going to jump through the wall, right?
Right, control of the environment.
Yeah.
And users have a different need for control.
Yeah.
And
that's
got to know our clients. We got to know.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Which is what all your both mine and your work is about.
Yeah. What do you think are some kind of environmental barriers that reduce productivity or focus, like general pitfall, distractions? That's true.
I mean, you know, and even discomfort. You know, like if you've got a scratchy fabric on a seat, or
non-breathable fabrics.
Non-breathable fabric. That's a big one. Or
Mm.
you know, glare. We mentioned earlier, shiny things, hard things. But for me, I'm more distracted when I can't hear. Like I'm a mother.
Yeah.
I need to know the children, or I need to hear them in the background.
That's true.
Where someone else might, you know, like, oh, I can't stand the sound of those kids. You know.
Oh, yeah.
I actually live across the street from a school, and I love the sound of the kids out on the playground.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
It makes me happy, and I don't, you know, I'm not listening to what they're yelling or playing and laughing.
Yeah.
But it's a nice background for me.
If they're too quiet, you're thinking, they're doing something they're not supposed to.
Gotta go check on the kids, or
I think one of the, like pivoting a bit, I think one of the common things we hear about nowadays is burnout and people getting to a point in work where they're just exhausted, mentally exhausted, I suppose. How do you think design can help reduce burnout or hopefully prevent it in a way?
You know, that's an interesting, and talking about productivity, you know, my mind goes to work environments. But since COVID, you know, people were sent home to work, and no one wants to come back now. That's also true. I think I wanted to come back, and I did come back as a professor. I was back pretty quick, but I've been in the home with my sister and my daughter who work from home a lot, and they're so productive from home. So what is it about the home environment that makes them more productive than in the work environment? And again, it's the distractions of it being in an office, being in a school, being in a, you know, wherever you work, compared, and then the comfort level, this insecurity that you feel, or this vulnerability that you might feel in a public space that you don't feel at home.
I think that's a good point that you bring out, is that, and again I go back like a couple of decades ago, where the expectation that if you worked in a company you had to kind of show up in like business casual as kind of the most casual you can
you
go
could wear
to.
jeans on Friday, maybe.
Exactly. And that was like, oh God, he's wearing jeans. And in the construction field, that's kind of hilarious, because you know, try wearing dress pants to a work site. You'll go through them quicker than napkins, I suppose. Yeah.
So providing a space that that doesn't hurt your user, you know, that doesn't make them angry, it doesn't make them, you know, then they're going to be more productive.
Fair enough.
And again, control. Like I want the lights low, you want the lights high. We got to have a dimmer on all our lights. You know, we got to have a chair that adjusts. Some people like to work standing up. Some people don't.
That is true. Yeah.
So adjustable desks, and we're kind of working all that into.
So it's all kind of about finding the right balance between, I guess, productivity and comfort. You want them to be productive, but you don't, but not to a point where it's kind of like
they're going to sleep.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's, you don't want it to be them so comfortable that they're falling asleep, and not so productive that they feel like they're in a sweatshop of sorts, I guess.
Right, and being watched. A lot of people, you know, the big change working at home.
So true, yeah.
People, but they're accountable. We're accountable because we're in Zoom meetings all the time.
That
You know,
is
you
so
couldn't work
true.
from home 20 years ago. You couldn't work with your colleagues as an architect, as an interior designer. You had to. We were constantly talking and collaborating. Now we're doing that more digitally, and so that makes it supportive, you know, to be, you know, like before. I remember the architects all and the designers all lined up on big drafting boards all in a row in big, well lit, you know, northern exposure drafting labs.
Well, you
And
had
now
to
we're-
have one of those tables at home if you're a student or a designer. That was a must. Yeah.
Right, you couldn't work. Like our students can work from anywhere, you know, and we can too now.
That's true. Yeah.
But as designers, we want to create a supportive environment, comfortable environment. And sometimes we want them to come into the office. And so we have to create, that's what you saw, I don't know, the Google offices of 10, 15, 20 years ago, where they had bouncing balls and scooters that they could ride around. We've kind of moved back away from that, but making it a fun place to be, or not even fun, but just supportive. Like I want to go into the office because all the staplers are there, and the hole punchers, and
that's true.
and my friends, and the break room has that great coffee machine.
Yeah. But I think it's a nice point, and I guess we'll finish up with this point that you bring in, that technology is at the core of it, of what we can and what we can do, especially when you mentioned remote working. Really, the software has caught up and allowed us to be able to collaborate on the same file altogether, for instance, and do all of that.
Right.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see, like 50 years into the future. Okay, how would that look like?
Right. Yeah, we can't anticipate, can we?
Yeah.
But I think interior design will still be here, and we'll still be
I believe so.
devoted to supporting our clients' needs with our
I believe so. Yeah.
with our choices.
Because I think as much as we like to think that, well, technology is shaping everything, we're still our core human needs are still the same pretty much throughout, right?
Right. We study human factors, you know, and
There you go,
that's,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
universal design components, and it doesn't change. I mean,
All right.
whatever technology, whatever colors are in style, whatever materials, they get better. I think the building systems, lighting, electrical, heating and air, you know, ventilation and opportunities for fresh air is so much better.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Denise. So many kind of things to think about, and thank you for being with us. So as we mentioned, productivity and designing for it is not just about efficiency, it's about finding the balance and protecting our mental well-being. And I think even small shifts in layout and lighting can help us stay focused and feel better. I want to thank you for spending time with us here on Mindscapes. Until next time, stay focused and stay well.